Hello, folks, and welcome to Got Your Back, NHL edition, LeBrun and Rishaug. It is giveaway day here on the podcast, courtesy our title sponsors at Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals. Stick around to the end of the pod. We're going to announce the winner of our Cross Country Canada giveaway. Did you see it? An awesome Yeti cooler, $300+ value, filled with Halloween candy in the Halloween spirit, as our title sponsor celebrates the 1-year anniversary of returning the company to its Canadian roots. Cross Country Canada started with just 4 pals in a garage with an idea. They built it up into a massive company and now have become a major player with multiple locations across Western Canada, over 100 employees, and they've diversified into every area of the construction industry, and we'll do a great giveaway by them at the end of today's podcast. Today on the show, Pierre LeBrun, Cheryl Pounder will join us. How about Phil Kessel? 990 career games played, 400th goal he scores in the process on a record-setting night. We'll check in on the situation white hot now in Vancouver with Bruce Boudreau and the Canucks. What a start for Nazem Kadri. Holy smokes, he's shooting the lights out. And does it feel like something needs to give with Shane Wright? You would think so when you look at his minutes played. We're also going to ask the question, what the heck is going on in Cheryl Pounder's basement? And she brings this one on herself. So you definitely have to hear Poundy talking about the Pounder household basement. And Arpon Basu is going to check in with our straight-to-the-point editorial segment today, dealing with Carey price and the price that players often pay for playing through the pain. Presented by Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals, this is Got Your Back, NHL edition. As we say, a bright and beautiful good morning to Pierre LeBrun and Cheryl Pounder. Pierre with the big smile and the Cowboys shirt on. After you took a journey, Pierre, to support your team.
Yeah, I broke the goose egg. I was 0 for 5 lifetime watching my Dallas Cowboys in person, to the point where a couple of years ago I said maybe I should just stop going.
Stop going. Them. You're the jinx.
My wife convinced me with a couple of friends of ours who always travel with us, let's go see them again. They beat Detroit. I had a smile on my face. It was a fabulous Sunday in Dallas, Texas.
Well, you've got some more paraphernalia on, for sure. You've got the hat on now. Last time I was on this pod, it was just the jersey, and you weren't speaking as highly.
Well, Cheryl, I don't do it on purpose. I don't own any other clothes other than suits for TSN or Cowboys stuff. That's all.
Like, you don't have a turtleneck? You don't have a turtleneck that you wear on the Habs panel?
What do you wear on a date night? What do you go out for dinner in?
I got some pretty nice high-end Cowboy stuff. Dinner wear.
No.
Okay,
flag.
I want to see that.
That's a flag.
Come on.
You can't wear team paraphernalia on a date night. I'm marking this down. We're doing this in a red card, yellow card, no card segment in a future podcast, Pierre.
Do you have a Cowboys tie?
By the way, date night for my wife and I is squeezing in a meal in between practices for the girls at hockey or my son. So let's just be clear about what a date night looks like in my house.
I hear you. It's true.
Hey, Poundy, is it just me, or did you liven up the set a little behind you, or did you change locations? Like we see some pictures.
Okay, now I changed a little bit of location because I have something I have something going on down in my basement that I really can't share with you.
Oh, what? What is going on in Cheryl's basement? This is. Wait a second. What could possibly be going on that you can't tell us?
Whole other story. So I felt like the kids' art would be a perfect setup for behind here. So
what? I'm writing these notes down. What is going on in Poundy's basement? Like
we'll
some sort of crazy.
Down there at some point. The den.
What kind of room are you building down there? I don't know.
Sounds like a reno to me.
Yeah, sounds like a reno with
downtown.
I was going to say, definitely some sort of code on the door. Whatever you're building down there has a lock.
Kids aren't allowed.
Kids are not allowed. Wow.
Yeah, out of the
Love
basement.
it, Poundy. That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys both. Great to see both of you. Lots to dig into this week. So let's get to the breakdown brought to you by Pro Hockey Life. 16 locations across the country, taking care of all your hockey needs. And remember, they really specialize in pro sharpening and repair for your skates. Their expert pro shop has technicians that'll provide you with a wide range of skate sharpening and profile options that best suit your skating style. Between their by hand sharpening or the Sparks automatic sharpening machines, they make sure you walk out with the perfect edge on your skates. Come by for your tune-up or your repair, for a skate stretch, to replace your rivets, coppers, eyelets, holders, or steel. Your skate's the most important tool you have when it comes to playing the game, and they take fantastic care of you and your skates at Pro Hockey Life. Okay, Phil Kessel has been blazing around on his skates for a long, long time, making 990 consecutive games played, scores his 400th goal as a way to celebrate. Poundy, he's just this absolute contradiction when you think Iron Man and what an Iron Man should be all about. Phil Kessel has kind of done it his own way. What are your takeaways from Kessel at 990 and 400 goals?
I think it's just incredible. I mean, you think about that number and, you know, in the number of games that he's actually played in the NHL, and the 990, and you think about the injuries in today's game. Yeah, he plays on the perimeter for the most part and doesn't take or give a lot of hits, and we know that. But it's pretty incredible when you think about him doing it his own way, whether it's hot dogs or whether it's not necessarily, you know, training as much in the summer. And I think maybe there's something to be said a little bit to a point of overtraining. Would you say that? But no, it's absolutely an incredible feat. We know what he's done with his shot, his speed over the years. And I just, you know, it's a great testament to longevity and his passion for the game. And I think as time goes on, people certainly have started to really appreciate his sense of humor. And we're seeing it even right now. So like he said, he enjoys the game. And I think it's just a great achievement.
Definitely a unique character. I mean, obviously he played here in Toronto where I'm based. And, you know, I think a lot about his career and how his trade to Toronto and his trade to Pittsburgh are a complete juxtaposition of how people perceived him, in the sense that when he was dealt here to the Leafs, Brian Burke traded for him. The Leafs were trying to short circuit a rebuild, and it was about building around Phil Kessel, which from the get-go just didn't fit. Phil Kessel doesn't want you to build a team around him. He wants to be a guy that helps support the core, you know, support offensively, but being the guy in front of the camera every day was not for Phil Kessel. And in many ways, you know, I felt for him when he was a Leaf, that it looked uncomfortable for him to be in that kind of spotlight. But then when he got dealt to Pittsburgh, and then he's just supporting Crosby and Malkin and Letang and just playing unbelievable clutch playoff hockey for that team, winning a cup with them, that was the perfect spot for him. Because now it's not about Phil Kessel's team or the entire thing revolving around him, but him just adding what he can. And I thought he fit in great there and showed why he's a guy you want to have on your team. So I always think about those two different fits, polar opposites for Phil Kessel, which in many ways kind of describe, you know, how his career has played out.
I think about moments.
I know that I've loved. Oh, sorry, Ryan.
Go ahead, Poundy.
Watching him when I was younger, and I used to always comment. I mean, just watching, you know, the Leafs or what it may be, just his shot walking off the half wall. That was something that I always talked about with the girls in my household anyways, his combination of his quick release. And that was something I always looked at, because his quick release, but the velocity on his shot as well. So he didn't give up with the release, and his accuracy, which allowed him, I think, to stay healthy in a lot of ways, because he didn't have to get inside the dot too often, right? And that can save your career as well when you don't have to get inside the dot.
Definitely some self-preservation in his game. I think, you know, we were looking at it. Rod Brind'Amour, I think, played 6 straight seasons of 82 games. That's a different, he would be the polar opposite.
Style of hockey.
That's a different style of hockey that Rod Brind'Amour would have played. I like the fact that his 400th goal too showed some nice speed. You know, worked his way up ice, full speed, not as fast as he used to be, but that's been his trademark. A gifted skater. I think about moments in his career, and there's a bunch of them, but the ones that stood out to me, you know, after the criticism in the media, he ends up with the hot dogs in the Stanley Cup, which was great. Last man standing at the All-Star draft. You guys remember that one?
Oh, that was
chopping down John Scott, right? Just hacking away at this 6'8" giant out on the ice there. And then there was a tweet. Do you guys remember the tweet he sent after the U.S. lost to Canada at the World Cup of Hockey in 2016? Phil Kessel left off that team. Just sitting around the house tonight with my dog, Felt like I should be doing something important, but couldn't put my finger on it.
Awesome.
I forgot about that.
I did forget about that one too. I
Yeah,
remember reading that. Yeah.
That was my favorite moment of Phil Kessel. But I don't know, Pierre, just a guy that kind of seemed to go about it his own way and never really got in line and, went about it the way most people did.
Yeah, and I've got room in the sport for people who are different. Like we don't need conformity from everyone. I like the fact that Phil Kessel's always followed the beat of his own drummer, and in many ways he reminds me a bit, not the way they play, because this guy went straight to the net and sacrificed himself all the time, but in terms of being a different character. Glenn Anderson, who played in your town for many years, Ryan, was such a unique character, and I always enjoyed, when I broke into the business, hearing Glenn Anderson interviews and how different he was, and his longevity, by the way. Glenn Anderson playing forever. Again, different players. The playoff highlights of Glenn Anderson are going through a goalie. But in terms of being, I think you guys would agree, if you remember Glenn Anderson, different, right? And fun and unique. And not everyone in the sport has to sound the same and play the same. And that's why I respect Phil Kessel for being different.
I agree. And don't you also think, Pierre, that sometimes as the media, and you become more familiar with the personality, sometimes a fan base can start to appreciate the personality as time goes on. And I feel like in some ways with Phil Kessel, that's what's happened. He's gone to Pittsburgh, he's won his cups, the longevity in his game, whether it's Arizona and now with Vegas. And, the community around him in terms of his team, there's always good things to say about him, being a great guy and all these kind of things and playing his own way. And part of that is also it frees you to play your own game when you're not conforming. And that's something that he's done throughout his career. And look at him, last guy standing right now. He's got the last laugh. And I thought it was kind of the irony with the coaches challenge the other day when it could have been against the Leafs. And I thought, he's no longer on the books, guys. Let him go.
Yeah, for sure. Well, an interesting moment last night, and we'll see how many more games in a row he can pile together. 990 games. Phil Kessel, the NHL Iron Man. Let's go over to the left coast. The situation in Vancouver, situation critical. 0-5-2 to start the season. It's been talked about nonstop. The coaching scenario with Bruce Boudreau. Yes, he's on the hot seat. We're not sure how long Vancouver's going to hold out before making that change, but outside the record, signs you look for that the coaching situation isn't where it needs to be. Their power play 22nd in the league, their penalty kill 32nd in the league at 57%. All the signs are there. Pierre, who are potentials if and when the Canucks decide to make a move?
That's not where I want to start, because I think before you get there, we have to ask the question, like, why is a coaching change, if it happens, going to make that much of a difference? Like, I don't want to say that I find it, disappointing. It's just, and listen, I'm sure there's a chance that that's where it heads for no other reason than Boudreau's deal is up at the end of the year. So he's an obvious target when you want to bring change eventually. But my sense is the players enjoy playing for him. The problem with this team is way bigger than who's behind the bench. The blue line. And then step back even more. Is this team under new management rebuilding, retooling, going for it? I'd like to hear more about sort of the vision, because I got to tell you, this summer when the Canucks extended JT Miller, I was surprised. First of all, when we were at the draft in Montreal, all we were hearing from other teams is that they were being encouraged to phone and to check in on the JT Miller's availability. In the end, the Canucks end up extending him, and okay, so you're thinking the Canucks feel they can maybe fast forward this retooling, but I think that's part of is this Francesco Aquilini saying, I don't have the patience to do what's actually required here? Okay, so I want to start there before we get to the, yes, is Bruce Boudreau possibly going to replace at some point this season? I mean, if the losing continues, I don't know how that can happen, but I just think that's a Band-Aid. I think you have to stand back if you're the Canucks and say, what are we doing long term here with this roster, which has some very good pieces, but I think we have to put some vision on what this actually needs here in terms of a rebuild versus a retool. So that's where I wanted to start. If there is a coaching change, keep in mind the Canucks are still paying Travis Green this season, and not nothing either. So I don't know that there would be an appetite at ownership's level to go out and get a high-paying person when you're also paying Travis Green and Bruce Boudreau through the end of the season.
Right.
So I would keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, I mean, and so many questions for me when you were talking just off the top there, Ryan, about, you know, where they're sitting in terms of their power play. But I was looking just at their goals for. I mean, they're sitting at 28th. Their goals against is 29th. I mean, when you look at the numbers, I mean, over 4 goals a game that they're allowing. And you've got Demko in net. And so what's going on in the back end is just the personnel, the strength of that back end, you know, in terms of being able to close up the middle, push and influence the outside. It's just simply not there at the moment. I mean, look at the experience back there. You've got guys on injury reserve. But again, I'm with you, Pierre. Like what's going on with the vision? Because, you know, they seem to be in a pretty scrappy place, and, you know, doesn't feel, or the sense around it is not a good vibe at the moment. Clearly, when you're not winning, that happens. But what are the pieces that either got to get moved, or do you hold the fort a little longer and see if they can work themselves out of this?
Yeah, and I think
I was just going to say, just remember that the person they brought in to shepherd all of the front office is Jim Rutherford, Hockey Hall of Fame executive, who we just talked about Pittsburgh and Kessel. I mean, Jim Rutherford, 3 Stanley Cup rings. He knows how to put together a winning roster.
Yeah,
That's not what I'm questioning here. What I'm questioning is, in many ways, what is the front office's leeway here from ownership on down to reconstruct this roster, and in what way? I'd like to know more about that.
Well, I mean, I think to your point, the JT Miller signing was an indication that it was going to be more about the here and now than it was restructuring for 2 or 3 years down the road. I mean, you put that piece in place and you pay him the money they're paying him. And I know it's not comfortable. Like we don't like talking about people losing their jobs potentially. And Boudreau's a nice guy. We all know that. But like Pierre, it is what it is. You know, they start by blowing multi-goal leads in their first 4 games, and everybody goes, okay, well, it's early, right? Sure, it's early. Well, it's 7 games. He's had multiple times he's come out in the media. I mean, talking about his team feeling mentally fragile. He talks, you know, like I got another clip here from him after the last game. I mean, he's very honest, but there are things you're hearing out of this locker room and out of him that I think the temperature is turned up, and you can hear why.
There was something like we're afraid to push. I mean, you saw when we scored the goal, we pushed and we finally got some zone time and everything else. But it's like they're standing around and looking like, oh, what's going to happen now? And it's unfortunate because I think they all care.
Like, these are things we're hearing out of this locker room that this early in the season, that feels like something you say after 45 or 50 games and you're 10, 12, 15 points out of the playoffs, not in the first 2 weeks of the season. That's why, part of the reason why this feels as white hot as it does. And frankly, I think it should be, Pierre.
Yeah, and again, if you peel the onion even further back for a moment, remember that even Bruce Boudreau coming back to coach was kind of an awkward, meandering path in the offseason, right? They had the mutual option where he could decide he wanted back or walk away, and the Canucks had the other side of the option. And it took quite a while for the two sides to sort of get to that point where they said, okay, let's do this, for next year. And I think obviously on Boudreau's side, without him having ever said this to me, but I'm just reading between the tea leaves, he would have appreciated an extension with a few more years on it, as opposed to coming back to an expiring deal. And frankly, what we know from some of the reporting is that, I think the Canucks front office weren't quite all on the same page about whether or not Boudreau should be their coach, certainly long term. So I think that background is important to remember heading into what now is, a bit of a gong show to start the year. Yeah,
you kind of create that situation for yourself by bringing a coach back on the deal that he's back on. And if you're not off to a good start, I mean, you basically, the water was set for this to be the narrative if they weren't off to the start that they wanted to be. Anything else from you, Cheryl, before we move on?
Yeah, just as an athlete, you know how difficult it is to be in a pressure cooker. And in his last comments, you know, there's fear attached to, you know, when you feel that pressure to want to win, to know that maybe perhaps you have a lead and you don't want to give it up. And it's not like you consciously go out there and don't give forth an effort or whatever. But sometimes when you overthink it, because you're in this pressure cooker, you know, you don't get your best performance because you're not free to play. And so that's part of the uncomfortable around the sport, and finding ways, really finding ways to play. And sometimes you just get to a point where you're like, you know, I'm allowed to swear on here, but you know, and then you wind up just going for it and just sort of eradicating it because you're at sort of your wit's end. So you can kind of feel it. It's at a breaking point there with respect to that. So sometimes you turn when that happens because, you know, there's nothing left to lose, nothing left to unturn in terms of your performance. So it'll be interesting these next few games, and maybe they need a real good night out.
Couple of points. They need something, right? They
right?
need
Like,
something to galvanize the group, like whether that's blowing one out or whatever it is. JT Miller had a better game their last game, and if he can get it going, he admits he has not been good this year. They just need to get off this ugly streak.
And the timing of Quinn Hughes' injury, my goodness.
Yeah.
Like if there's one guy in that lineup other than Demko that
you can't lose.
Can't lose.
You cannot lose him.
Okay, meanwhile, in Calgary, Nazem Kadri points in all 6 games. He's got 4 goals, 5 assists, 9 points, 2-1 last night in an important game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Flames are off to the 5-1 start. This has been a sensational fit in Calgary, and I don't know if it should be surprising to anybody. You know, Daryl Sutter and Nazem Kadri seem like a pretty good match. Mm-hmm. But has there been a better fit in terms of a high-profile player changing locations? This is something.
Well, and I would say, I don't know how Cheryl feels about this, but, you know, over the years when we've seen contenders change some major parts in their core, often you'll see them struggle in October. They have to sort of find their sea legs.
Yeah.
And I think we should not take for granted what the Calgary Flames have done coming out of the gates. They forcibly had to part ways with 2/3 of arguably one of the top lines in hockey in Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew Tkachuk, and bring in Huberdeau and Kadri and Weegar on the back end. And you're thinking, okay, how is all this going to fit? I remember talking to Brad Treliving about it in September, and he was saying on paper, yeah, but let's see how it all comes together quickly enough. I mean, the GM himself was curious about that. And here they are coming out like this. These guys have been in Calgary for 10 years.
No.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't happen every time. So I think we have to underline that part of it too.
Well, yeah, and you can certainly tell him he's a Sutter type of guy. But even I know we were asked earlier in the year, especially coming out of the summer and these acquisitions. And I remember saying, I actually think, you know, they've made out better here, but is there an opportunity? Do you think that Kadri can reproduce the year that he had? And not likely was kind of the answer. And then he walks in there and he's owning it. And, you know, he has that ability to play with an edge on his entries. And so he's got that rough and tumble to him. You know, he's got that hard nose, but the ability to finish now. And you're seeing that chemistry. I love what you say, though, Pierre, because it does take some time. And typically speaking, where, you know, not only do you have to get familiar with your surroundings, you're in a new environment, but then you've got new wingers, you've got new guys that you've got to figure out how to weave with. But, you know, he's a veteran and he just kind of applied that to his game. You know what you're going to get from him. He's just elevated. And I mean, it's been real eventful and it's been fun to watch because, hey, coming out of the summer when everyone was like, man, oh man, what's going to happen here? This team are they going to be in a rebuild? Is this going to be a completely depleted team? And now, you know, I have them as a contender in terms of the cup. And so again, it's some great acquisitions, but look what they're doing. And so stay healthy.
And to me, I don't want to completely say it's not important, but I'm not terribly interested in what Kadri's offensive numbers are at the end of this regular season. I'm interested in what he brings come the playoffs because, you know, I was out there, you know, supporting you, Ryan, during the Battle of Alberta. We covered that series together and
carrying me.
And I'll tell you, and I guess there's no bigger criticism you can say about a team, but I was amazed at the lack of pushback from the Calgary Flames once Edmonton took over that series. And I remember thinking, okay, so who's the guy on this team that says we're not just going to except losing 4 straight after winning the opener here. And I didn't see it from the Calgary Flames. I was kind of surprised how quiet that series ended up going. And this is where I think Nazem Kadri entering the Battle of Alberta for me, and we can only pray that these two teams meet again come the playoffs. But that's where I think he's a difference maker because of the way that he plays and the way that he cares. I'm looking forward to that.
A couple of his main playoff performances, 19-20 with Colorado, 15 games. He was 9-9 for 18 points. 16 games last season, 7-8 for 15 points. When he gets going in the postseason, he produces at a high level.
Well, yeah, he does. And I mean, I can go back to, when you get to playoffs, everyone knows that there's less time and space on the ice. And with your keying on certain guys, that means that guys aren't, they're looking to move the puck to someone that's no longer available. So it's on your stick maybe a second longer than you'd normally have it. So you have to be able to withstand the pressure of a guy coming on you and being physical, and you have to be willing to pay the price to get to the interior because it toughens up, it tightens up. And here's a guy who isn't afraid to get to the middle of the ice and pay the price. And that is a skill, in a lot of ways, to be able to be hard and physical, especially on entry. I find that edge on entry, not just going the other way from a defensive standpoint, but not just play those tough minutes, but be willing to get to those particular areas while you've been closed on. And he did that. He's done that so effectively. And why I think in particular in playoffs, and Pierre, you said it perfectly. He's just, he's the type of guy you want in your lineup. As long as he's in it.
And in chatting with new Colorado GM Chris McFarland before the season, he did not hide the fact that the Avalanche are accepting the narrative that they may have a real tough time replacing Nazem Kadri. They couldn't sign him.
Yeah.
They had to give that money to Nichushkin, who's off to an unbelievable start. He's a younger player and such a beast in the Cup final for them, but they couldn't bring everyone back. But the point being that the Avs understand the crater that Kadri leaves behind from leaving as their second line center. And the reality is, if the internal options don't fill that in closer to March 3rd, the Stanley Cup champs aren't going to sit there and say, oh, well, we'll just live with this. There may not be a more aggressive team at the trade deadline than the Colorado Avalanche if they feel that they haven't figured out, the missing offense on their second line. So I would keep an eye on them.
4-2-1 in their first 7 games. All right, last item here before we get to some goofy games. Pierre, the World Cup, you're reporting on Insider Trading that the potential is as high as ever for a delay here with the World Cup. I guess my question to you would be, why are they considering delaying it? And does it have to do with the difficult decision that they have to make over what to do about Russia? And why is this decision proving to be so difficult? It feels obvious. It feels like, go ahead, do the World Cup when you want to do it, and you don't have a Team Russia. Why is it more complicated than that?
Yeah, it's certainly the Russia thing is certainly part of it. I would say the number one reason, although no one involved wants to acknowledge that publicly, they've acknowledged publicly. Bill Daley and Gary Bettman at the Board of Governors meeting last week in New York when I was there. Acknowledge that there are other countries, European countries, that have voiced their opposition to Russia being in the World Cup of hockey while the conflict in Ukraine continues. And you can understand why they feel that way, which has put the NHL and the NHLPA, let's not forget, this is an NHLPA tournament. They host it together. It's put both of them in a tough spot, because obviously they understand where those federations are coming from. But at the same time, Russian NHL players are a big part of the NHL brand. And so it's a thorny issue for the NHL for sure. And so what I can gather and why I reported on it for Insider Trading is that last week when Gary Bettman dropped a little unsolicited, I should add, well, maybe we'll have to delay the World Cup. That's the first time I've heard the league say that publicly.
Yeah.
And I followed up on it this week, and it's something that the NHLPA, I know, has talked about internally in its own calls. And the idea is, the World Cup hasn't been here since 2016. Is this the best time, February 24, to bring back this event that they want to be really important for the league and the PA, or do we delay this thing? And I think, listen, there are other issues. The IIHF has other things that they're concerned about that have not been ironed out with the league. The league and the PA are going to meet with the IIHF in Tampere, Finland, the weekend of November 4th and 5th coming up, when Colorado and Columbus are there, to try and further discuss this. They've not closed the door on still having it in February 24, let me be clear. But it feels to me from the calls I've made that the momentum to delay this event now is starting to gather steam. So we'll see where this goes.
All right. It seems to me like, this issue with Russia, it's not a comfortable thing. It's not an easy thing to go ahead and do, but it does feel obvious to me. And by delaying it, it's almost like they don't want to plant that flag in the ground and make that difficult call and say, we stand with what so much of the rest of the world is doing. By putting it off, it feels like they're avoiding that decision, to me anyways. I'm not sure. We'll see which way it goes. Contentious, to say the least.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a breakdown. Great stuff, guys. Listen, we're gonna do a segment that's gonna be a challenge. We tried this last week with Johnny and Dregs, and the reason it's a challenge is because, listen, none of us are great at being short-winded. We're all fairly long-winded. We're broadcasters.
What?
We love to hear ourselves
What
talk.
are you talking about?
No. I don't include you, Pierre. That was only a 5-minute answer on the World Cup that you just gave us there. By the way, the quiz master who does some advising for us here on Got Your Back does not like the name I've come up with for this segment. I'm calling it Chimes because I'm going to just sort of throw out an innocuous little note or fact or something like that. You guys chime in. 15 to 20 seconds are the length of your chime. Just give me a thought on what I'm going to put out there. Okay. 15 to 20 seconds.
15 to 20. Oh, boy. Start your clock.
I know, Poundy. I'm trying to decide which one of you is going to have a tougher go at this. I feel like it's going to be you.
I'm just going to listen to Pierre. I'll give my...
Okay. Cheryl's basement, go.
Yeah, Cheryl's basement. What the heck is going on? I need to find out. You know what? I think I've got a sound effect here. I might even have a sound effect in my board that will work if you're going over time. Let me see. What do I got?
It should be like a buzzer.
No, let me see what I have here. I think I have... Whoa, that was loud. Did you hear that? You guys could hear that?
Yeah, wow. You are really official.
I could do that instead.
You've got sound effects. You've got...
Yeah, I've got a great one here of Darren Dreger.
Oh, this is big.
No, that's too long. That's not going to work. Okay, we'll go the offside whistle.
That eats up our time.
Yeah, if you're going too long, you're going to get
So what if we have nothing to say about something?
Just say pass. I mean, generally I don't keep score, but it will be a bit of a competition. So I wouldn't recommend passing because you won't get any points.
I'm feeling it. Feeling the heat.
You're feeling it? Okay, here we go. All right, Chimes. Shane Wright. 6 minutes, 14 seconds, 6 minutes, 50 seconds, 6 minutes, 36 seconds, 8 minutes, 42 seconds, 5 minutes, 51 seconds, and 3 healthy scratches. Shane Wright, Pierre, you start.
David Branch is going to hate me, but this is why at some point in the next decade, they have to revisit why first-round picks from Canadian juniors should have the option of playing AHL hockey. That's all I got.
That's all you got? I'm going to say amen, Pierre. You're the winner with your Dallas stuff on, because I'm telling you, with confidence, confidence goes a long way. You have to have enough minutes to actually get your feet, get your legs under you, and find your game. It just simply isn't enough.
Could you imagine him on the World Junior team with Bedard and Fantilli?
Yeah, this is what I'm waiting for. Come on, Wright. Can you imagine that?
I know. That wasn't a comment you were supposed to chime on, so you get penalty points for talking when you weren't supposed to talk. The Boston comeback stories. Jim Montgomery, what a great comeback story. 6-1 to start. David Krejci, 2-6-8 in his first 7 games played. The Boston comeback stories have been great this year. Poundy.
Krejci, unbelievable to be able to come back into the lineup and have that kind of impact. Boston, I've been looking at saying, a wild card situation here, but look with the injuries and the start that they got off to. Krejci all the way.
Pierre, this is where you talk.
I thought you just gave Cheryl criticism for chiming in when she wasn't supposed to chime.
I know. I didn't lay the rules out fair enough. You both have a chance.
I'm thrilled for Jim Montgomery. I had the privilege of writing his story when he opened up about his struggles, and it was one of the hardest stories I've ever had to write, because you could feel the pain in his voice.
Yeah.
And how difficult it was for him to open up, and to see him a few years later back behind an NHL bench as a head coach. Amazing.
Great story.
Yeah.
It is a great story.
That was emotional content. I was going to whistle you because you went too long, but it would have been rude to whistle you in the middle of that content.
I agree.
So
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So it is amazing stuff. But timing wise, you did deserve the whistle there. The Vegas goaltending: Logan Thompson, 3-2, 931 save percentage, 2.03 goals against. Aiden Hill is 3-0. This is the most innocuous goaltending combination, and here they are, the early Jennings favorites, Pierre.
Well, listen, I think the World Championships was an important experience for Logan Thompson, by the way. And I think, going there and after playing late last season for Vegas, I think it did wonders for his confidence. You're seeing it.
Yeah, confidence is everything when you get between the pipes. I mean, I think he's 25 years of age. He played 19 games last year, I think. But I mean, it's pretty incredible to see, what he's done between the pipes. And when you gain that confidence, everything just, the presence that he has in the crease, you can just see it elevate. And it's fun to watch because the game, it changes when you get that kind of confidence.
Oh, you just made it under the whistle. Austin Matthews, 1 goal on 33 shots this season. Through 7 games played. He had 3 at this time last year, though he did start the season hurt. 1 goal in 7 games played. Poundy, level of concern's not even the right word, but I don't know. What do you think?
Well, listen, he's back-to-back Rocket winner. I'd be more concerned about the entire team at the moment versus just Austin Matthews. I certainly think there's a level of frustration there. You can see he's just off the mark with some of his shots, and that the vibe certainly isn't quite there. But he's going to come. It's going to come at some point. 2-time Rocket, hard. This guy's got it going on. Just got to find the tempo within the team right now.
Zero concern with him individually. I may have concerns on the Leafs, but zero with Austin Matthews. His career shooting percentage way higher than his current shooting percentage. The math doesn't compute that this will continue. There's a bushel of goals coming for 34.
Yeah, and I was actually going to finish with an Austin Matthews clip from the other day because I liked it. Here is Austin Matthews on 1 goal in the 7 games.
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, I know it's I don't know. It's frustrating for sure, but I think we're getting the chances, and I just need one to go in.
Just need one to go in. And remember, it was a sluggish start for him last year. Yeah, they'll start falling once.
It will fall. And he typically scores in bunches. So when it starts, it really does start, right? So don't be surprised if all of a sudden he gets a hattie one game and it just changes him. But in the way he skates in diagonals in the offensive zone, he's getting available. He's getting the shots. As you mentioned, 33. It's going to come. It's going to drop.
Yep. I agree. All right, that was the breakdown brought to you by Pro Hockey Life. Before we let you guys go, we do have to dig into red card, yellow card, no card. I put this out on Twitter yesterday. I'm going to throw this scenario out there for you guys, and you can let me know your thoughts on, offside or not. Red card, yellow card, no card. This idea came up because I was on Facebook of all places, and there was a chat group, a neighborhood chat group, not in my neighborhood, but another neighborhood. Somebody was complaining because a person walking their dog picked up their dog's doggy doo-doo and placed it in their garbage, like in the person's garbage on their driveway.
That's a tough one.
So rather than carrying it around with them until they came across a public garbage can. And so the question was being asked on this community chat, like, is this okay? Should this be done? I got thinking about it, and I'll give you my answer to start. To me, this is a red card. I think when you're placing that in someone else's garbage, especially if you have to go onto their property to do it, especially if the dog just did its business right there, I feel like it's a bridge too far. It's a step too far. For me, this is a red card. Poundy, are you a dog owner? What do you think here?
I'm not. I have budgies, man. I don't have dogs. Sorry, and
what?
they just.
But budgies.
We don't. Budgies, yeah, we don't have to worry about, that kind of stuff. But I'm saying yellow card because, there's a part of me that says, the garbage is right there. And, they just pooped right there. I can just pick it up and I can walk it over and I can do my part instead of walking down the road with it in my hand. So, I'm all about, if I see litter at the end of my driveway, I might put it in my neighbor's garbage. Then again, I live in a postage stamp beside my neighbor, so it's right there. So, yeah, yellow.
Yellow card.
Well, we also know how many things you steal from a hotel room, Cheryl, to be fair.
Yeah.
So,
I was just waiting, guys.
By
I
the
had
way.
my Keurig batch ready to show you.
Goodness
And
sakes.
and just getting the empty cardboard box and throw all of the ones I get from hotels in there and bring them to the camera.
So I'm a yellow card in terms of a stern warning. I don't like it, but what I will say is, first of all, there are 3 dogs that live in my house. One is mine. The other 2 dogs are my mother-in-law's, who lives with us. So we are all about dogs. And the one thing I will tell you is that once in a blue moon, you get a number 2 pickup while walking the dogs where the bag is a bit flimsy and doesn't do the full job, and there's stuff dripping
Right.
all over the place.
Right.
That's a
And
good point.
you have an
That's an
emergency. You have an emergency where you can't just be walking with this bag. So
Yeah.
in that specific scenario, I agree with using whatever is the closest garbage, even if it's a residential one. Otherwise, if you got a good bag scoopage situation,
Yeah.
you can just put a knot in it and wait till you get home, or a public garbage, in my opinion.
Couple of details that matter to me. I think it's entirely different if it's garbage day and the garbage can is down at the end of the driveway.
That
I think
matters.
that changes it.
Okay,
I think that
so
changes it.
Let's hold on here. Are we walking up with our poop bag to the side of the house and muddling through?
And putting it in someone's garbage that's at their house.
That's
We're not talking down on the driveway on garbage day. I think on garbage day on the end of
I'm
your driveway
thinking on
is
garbage
probably
day
okay.
now.
Put this out on Twitter. Andrew says bag tied up before thrown in bin ? If so, I'm okay with it. Yes, bag tied up. You're not lobbing an untied bag into the garbage can.
That's what you do. Isn't that what you do when you're in high school when you don't like someone?
Yeah, exactly. That's basically pranking somebody. James Emerson says yellow, and only because it's supposed to go in the food scraps bin and not the garbage bin. Oh, so for those communities that have the food scrap bin. Kane Lambert says no card. Clint says if it ends up in the garbage in a bag, no less. Who gives a beep? You know what? A little play on words there. I would say it's probably no card is the overwhelming winner, but here on Got Your Back, we do have the ultimate arbiter, as you guys know, here on Got Your Back. Ted Hitchcock from Shoresy, our good friend Terry Ryan, Montreal Canadiens first round pick, national treasure. This man's opinions, they should be in a museum because he is the ultimate arbiter, and here he is.
As the ultimate arbiter, I call no card on the play.
Oh.
There are enough dog owners going around unchecked, leaving their dog droppings all over the city like it's some kind of extended toilet. Now we're going to criticize which garbages are being selected for disposal? I think not. If you're that anal about who uses your garbage, go buy a lock. And then maybe take a long look in the mirror and remind yourself, tools go in a toolbox, hockey gear goes in a hockey bag, and garbage goes in a garbage can. No card on the play. Final answer.
Hey,
TR.
TR.
The case.
The ultimate
That's a
arbiter.
great. By the way, that's a great red, yellow, no card question this week, though. I give you props for that, Ryan.
It's not as good as next week's, Pierre. You know what next week's is?
Okay.
I can already tell you. You're going to be excited about this. Ready? Is it okay to wear your favorite team's apparel on a date night with your wife? That, and I'm not giving you my answer. We're holding off, but Pierre, that is coming at you on Twitter in the days to come. You provided us golden material.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's either going to be that, or we're going to do some sort of people sending us their suggestions of what in the heck is going on in Poundy's basement. We need people's suggestions as to what this could be. Poundy, what is happening?
Oh, it's just.
I think the funniest part is if my wife gets wind of your Twitter poll question, she'll be like, "Wait, we had a date?"
Oh, I think I know.
Yeah,
it's not going to be.
Aren't they, Pierre?
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty for you, Pierre. It's going to be a tough week. I feel like you might want to call in sick for that one.
Nope, I'll take it.
All right, guys. Great stuff. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Well, Poundy, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon. Lots more to come after the break, including Straight to the Point with our good friend from The Athletic, Arpon Basu. We want to tell you about a truly Canadian company. Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals provides equipment and supplies to all facets of the Canadian construction industry. But what sets them apart is their get-her-done attitude. It's a core value of their company. I've been to the offices. I've seen how they proudly display that on the wall at each branch. Every one of the staff members lives by the get-her-done formula to ensure they'll never let their customers down. They'll bend over backwards to get their clientele what they need when they need it. They don't make excuses. Cross Country Canada takes great pride in this attitude, and they truly believe that the success of their customer is their success. You can't get much more Canadian than that. All right, time to get straight to the point. And for today's segment, we go back to our good friend from The Athletic, Arpon Basu. If you didn't get a chance to read his article this week with Carey Price, I highly recommend that you seek it out. Price opened up with Arpon about a lot of things that he endured during his career, the difficulties that he had with different addiction issues, and also pain management and some of the things that he endured in trying to play through significant injuries. That is the subject of our Straight to the Point this week with Arpon as he digs into the price of players sucking it up.
Pain is a subject that remains far too taboo in the NHL today. You may have noticed on Tuesday I had a chance to talk to Carey Price recently, and we talked about pain in many different contexts. Physical pain, and in his case, mental pain, which stemmed from alcohol use, and the courage that he needed to recognize he had a problem and ask for help. And then the further courage that he needed to talk to me about it and let the world know what he was going through. This is courage that should be commended, and it's courage that we see far too seldom in the NHL. When it comes to pain, it is something that NHL players have long been trained to keep inside, to not talk about, to play through it, suck it up. This is a culture that needs to change. And Carey Price is just one example of that. When it comes to physical playing, Carey Price played through a knee injury throughout the 2021 playoffs, realizing that he had one opportunity that he waited his whole life for, a chance to win a Stanley Cup, an improbable run to a final that he knew at that point he was probably never going to get again. So he sucked up the pain, and now his career is in jeopardy as a result. Shea Weber did the same thing. He's never going to play hockey again. We see it all over the league, where players play through pain and later regret it. I recently spoke to Sean Monahan, who had hip surgery in back-to-back years, and how now he wishes he had done that 3 to 4 years earlier because he played through pain and didn't complain. This is so ingrained in NHL culture that it's become just natural for these players, but it's not something that they should be doing. If you look at it from a purely business standpoint, which I don't think we should do, but let's look at it from that standpoint. NHL teams, owners, spend millions of dollars on these players, and yet they allow the players to have the first say in whether or not they will play, because it is on the players to admit that they're hurt or injured, which for some reason is a distinction to players, but really it shouldn't be. And then we wonder why it was that they waited so long to fix a problem that had existed for so long. What Carey Price did, again, took some courage. And hopefully people around the league will look at what he did in admitting that he had a problem, in publicly stating that he needed help, and in owning that and explaining the entire situation publicly, openly, transparently, to show that NHL players are not invincible. I shouldn't say infallible, but not invincible. That they do suffer pain, and that when they do so, they need to say something about it. This is a unique case with Carey Price, but there are unique cases like this across the league. NHL players need to come to grips with the fact that they are not supermen. That sometimes they need help, whether that's with mental pain, whether that's with physical pain, and admit it, tell their teams, and get the help that they need.
All right, and before we wrap up the podcast, folks, time to do our Cross Country Canada supplies and rentals giveaway. And before we do, we should explain why they're doing a giveaway here on the podcast. So, Cross Country Canada is a company that was started by 4 guys who wanted to provide equipment and supplies to an industry that they knew a whole lot about, right? The oil patch. And so they got this company together in a real short period of time. They grew it really fast. And within a year, they were bought out by an American company. They did incredibly well. So a lot of people would kind of take the money and run, right? But not this crew. They rallied together and pooled the money, and a couple years later, they actually bought their company back. This is so rare to have this happen. So they bought it back, took it over again, and have been rocking and rolling ever since. It's 100% Canadian owned and operated, which they're really proud about. They've got multiple locations across Western Canada, over 100 employees, and they've diversified into all different areas of the construction industry. So it was just over a year ago that they bought their company back, and they're celebrating by doing a giveaway here on Got Your Back. Did you see it? It's this Yeti cooler. This thing is a beauty. These things are over $300, and they stuffed it full of Halloween candy. Why not, right? Getting in the Halloween spirit. So we asked for your submissions. Real easy trivia question. We had a whole pile of submissions, and we thank you for your subscriptions and for taking part. Absolutely love it when listeners and viewers participate here on the podcast. And I am here to announce that the big winner of the Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals giveaway, and I hope I'm saying this name right, Steve Veldhusen. So, Steve, we will be reaching out to you on Twitter. Cross Country Canada will be in touch, and they will be sending you this big, beautiful Yeti Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals cooler stuffed full of Halloween candy. Right on. Look forward to doing more giveaways here on the podcast in the months ahead. That'll wrap the pod today. Big thanks to Arpon, Basu, Cheryl Pounder, Pierre, LeBrun. And a reminder, keep an eye on our feed. We are going to have an interview pod drop a little bit later on this week, trying to line things up with Trevor Zegras from the Anaheim Ducks. So Thursday or Friday, keep an eye out for that interview with LeBrun and I. Big thanks to our sponsors, Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals, Pro Hockey Life, of course, and Liberty Smart Security, also a sponsor here on Got Your Back. Have yourselves a fantastic Wednesday, and we'll talk to you in the next couple of days. Cheers, everybody.